My name is Gaynell Brady, and I am the Executive Director of the Lower Ninth Ward Homeownership Association. And tonight I want to welcome you to Understanding Your Property Taxes. And tonight I just want you guys to feel free to post any questions that you have. Let me say this before I know questions start to come in. Post the questions inside of the chat box, or if you're with us on Facebook, you can also share your questions there. So the Lower Ninth Ward, the objective of the Lower Ninth Ward is to assist homeowners. We want to make sure that homeowners are able to remain in their homes and that we're able to continue the legacy of homeownership that was left to all of us in the Lower Ninth Ward. We work daily to support community objectives and initiatives that improve the quality of life in the Lower Ninth Ward. And our absolute number one objective is to increase the number of homeowners in the Lower Ninth Ward. So it is my pleasure to introduce to you M.A. Sheehan. She is our housing director and she is amazing. You are going to enjoy her presentation. If you were able to listen to her earlier on Oliver Thomas' show on WBOK, she kind of like gave you a little sneak peek of what she's going to talk about tonight. But I want you to sit back, grab your notepad and your pen and take some notes. And if you need any information from the Lower Ninth Ward Homeownership, you can also check out our website at www.l9wha.org. This series is a part of our monthly series that we're going to do on Tuesdays. You can also go to our website to sign up for the next class that we have next month on the 9th again, same time. Please go and pre-register for that. And I want to present to you Miss M.A. Sheehan.
Thank you so much, Gaynell. You're such an inspirational leader for us. Yeah, so as Gaynell said, our mission is to help there be the absolute largest number of homeowners possible in the Lower Ninth Ward. And one piece of that is protecting the homes of people who are already homeowners and making sure that no homeowners are paying more taxes than they owe. Now, the information that we share with you tonight is relevant to the entire city. So we usually focus specifically on the Lower Ninth Ward, but we've obviously opened this up so everyone in the entire city will be able to benefit from it. And as Gaynell said, we'll be taking questions, put them in the chat box or the Q&A. Mostly we'll hold them to the end, but our moderators will be able to jump in with a question if it seems that we should answer it as we're going. So Sarah, can you give us the next screen on the PowerPoint? Now, I don't know if you want to put the camera on me. The camera is still on Gaynell. So the most important thing everybody should take away with it tonight is that bills are due this year on February, taxes are due this year on February 28th. So this in itself is a little confusing because they're usually due on January 31st, but there was a little glitch this year. So they're due on February 28th. So that gives you an extra month. If you're a day late, interest starts to accrue and the interest is 12% per year. So you really want to pay your taxes on time so you can avoid having that interest starting to accrue. The other thing is you can make partial payments, but if you do, the payments will be applied to your old bills before they get paid to your new bills. And also if you have code enforcement liens or anything like that, your payments will be applied to your old liens before they're applied to your current bill. So that's just something to be aware of. So let's go to the next slide, Sarah. So the next thing, very basic again, but just want to get the essential information out first. And this too is a little bit different this year because of COVID, and people might want to approach it differently this year because of COVID. You can pay by mail. If you pay by mail, there's a stub that comes with your bill and you will want to enclose that stub so it gets credited to your tax bill and not somebody else's. In terms of when it is credited, they will use the postmark date if you're just paying this year's taxes and that's all you owe. If you actually owe back taxes, it needs to be received by February 28th. If you have no back taxes, it's just this year's bill, it has to be postmarked February 28th. So, but the earlier you submit it, the better, just to make sure there isn't a glitch. The other thing they're doing this year is there's a drop box at City Hall. So that's new. You haven't been able to pay at a drop box before. And then you can also pay online. That's been available for a long time. If you look at your screen, the website address is available, nola.gov/pay-taxes. The downsides of paying online are you can't make partial payments, and that means you have to pay your prior bills and your current bill and all of your liens. You can't just make a partial payment if you're paying online. The second downside of paying online is that it's free if you pay by e-check. If it comes straight out of your checking account, it's free. But if you pay by credit card, it's a 2.5% fee if you pay by credit card. And if you're paying, $1,000 or something, that fee can run up. So the last option is to go to City Hall, like many people have been doing for years. This year, of course, you would want to be extra safe about going to City Hall because of COVID. You'll have to go through a temperature check and that kind of thing before you go in. And so that's really your last alternative. The drop box is better than that if you can do it that way. Okay, so Sarah, I'm not sure the PowerPoint is showing now. It's not showing on my screen. We have a lovely picture of Gaynell on my screen. So weird. I don't know why we have Gaynell's picture. Anyway, so if anybody has questions about how to pay your bill, please put them in the chat box, and we're going to have a lot of time for questions at the end because we want to know what your issues are. I'm kind of giving you a broad overview, and then we want to hear what your issues are. So that's how to pay your bill. So if we move on to the next screen, Sarah. Is Gaynell's picture up?
No, you are.
Oh, okay. So if we move on to the next screen, so the next screen is, do you have a question about your bill? So if you have questions, or if you didn't receive your bill, you can call the city. And the number that you call for any questions about tax payments is 888-387-8027. So especially if you didn't receive your bill, if you did not get a bill in your mail, that does not mean you don't have taxes due. It probably means they have the wrong address. And if they have the wrong address for you, that means your taxes are piling up, and it's not going to be a good situation. So if you did not receive a tax bill, call that number and find out what taxes you owe so you can be ready to pay them before February 28th. When you call, you should ask for a breakdown on all payments that are due. If you have past payments that are due, you want a breakdown on what those are so you have a true understanding of what you owe. And if you didn't receive your bill, you also need to call the assessor and give them your new address. The assessor is the one that keeps track of your mailing address. So you need to call your assessor and give them your new address. And the number for that is 658-1300. And so also call City Hall if you have any other questions about your bill. If you just don't understand it, what you're supposed to do, or some of the instructions on the bill, you just call City Hall. So can we have the next slide, Sarah? Okay, how can I lower my bill? This is the $64,000 question, right? A lot of people are getting bills and they're thinking my bills are too high. Um, a lot of people are seeing higher bills because a year ago, the assessor is required to reassess every property at least once every 4 years. And so he did most of the city last year and the rest of the city just for the 2021 tax year. So a lot of people's bills went up. You have a right to challenge your assessment. So if your bill went up because your assessed value went up, you can challenge that. That challenge must be made between July 15th and August 15th every year. So you should be preparing now, thinking about now, that if you think your assessed value is too high, you can challenge it this summer. And later on this spring, we're going to do another training specifically about challenging your assessment. The other issue that you can be working on now is making sure you have your homestead exemption. The homestead exemption, no matter what age you are, if you own and you live in your property, you can get a homestead exemption. The homestead exemption is the first $75,000 of value of your property is exempt from taxes. The only exception to that is if there are two owners and only one of them lives in the house, then you don't get the full 75,000, you get half of the 75,000. So the best way to lower your tax bill is to apply for the homestead exemption. When you apply, if you applied right now, your tax bill would still, you've already gotten your tax bill. So whatever your tax bill is, it'll still say that, and they're still going to ask you to pay that on February 28th. But if you apply right now, you actually won't owe that full amount of taxes. Your taxes will go down for 2021. Not only that, your taxes will go down for the last 3 years as long as you were already living in the house at that point. So the homestead exemption is a great, great way to reduce your taxes. The other ways to reduce your taxes are once you have the homestead exemption, to apply for the age freeze, which once you're 65 and you have a homestead exemption, your taxes can't go up. There's also a disability freeze and a veterans freeze. All of that, you can find more information on the assessor's website. That's all related to your assessment. So the assessor's website is nolaassessor.com. I have that address on the screen for you. And the phone number is 658-1300 to get in touch with the assessor, find out about your homestead exemption, your age freeze, and the actual assessed value of your property. So if we go on to the next screen, so if you get behind on your taxes, one of the things that happens is that the city can take you to tax sale. That means selling your property because your taxes are unpaid. If that happens, not only do you have to pay all of your back taxes, but you're also required to pay any tax sale costs and any fees that have accrued because of the tax sale process. However, if it does go to tax sale, there is what's called a redemption period. So after the tax sale, there's a 3-year period where you can get your property back if you pay all your back fees and all of your back taxes. The other thing, one of the issues that comes up with tax sales too, is whether you actually got a proper notice of that sale. So if you find out sort of after the fact that your property has gone to tax sale, you may be able to challenge it. If you didn't receive proper notice that it was going to tax sale, you might be able to challenge it that way. Outside yes.
I don't mean to interrupt, but we have a couple of questions from the audience, and I didn't want to get too far ahead. Let's go with some questions. So one question from Daryl, we have, what is the minimum age for tax exemption?
Hi, Daryl. Thanks so much for that question. The homestead exemption does not relate to age. So you can be 20 years old And if you own and live in your home, you qualify for the homestead exemption. So that's a great thing. That does not, that the only provision for the homestead exemption is you have to own the house and live in the house. The thing that does have an age connected to it is the age freeze, which keeps your taxes from going up, and that is 65. So to get the age freeze, you have to be 65 or older. And there is an income limit for the age freeze. It changes a little bit every year, but it's something like $74,000. If you make more than a certain limit, you don't qualify for the age freeze. So to apply for the age freeze, the tax department actually wants you to take either your prior year's income taxes, or if you have a Social Security award letter, you have to prove your income as well as your age to qualify for the age freeze.
Okay, I'm going to move around a little bit just so that the questions will go in order. Another question we have is, how do we apply for the homestead exemption during COVID?
Yes, great question. Thank you. We've worked really closely with the assessor on working that out. You call the assessor's office and they will mail you the homestead exemption application. They don't post the form on their website. They only provide it to you personally. So they will mail it to you and then you can mail it back to them. They used to have a Dropbox. I don't know if the assessor still has a Dropbox. It definitely had one during the appeal period. I'm not sure whether they still do, but call them and they will mail you a form.
Okay. And is that the same as for the age freeze?
Yes, you need to call them for that also. And you have to show them your tax return or your Social Security award letter. So I encourage you to use the Dropbox. People are going to be a little less excited about putting those items in the mail. So I encourage you to use the Dropbox for that.
Okay. And I have one last question right now, MA. Lacey wants to know, why did she get a bill when it should be paid by her mortgage company? Do they just send the bill to everyone?
Usually, hopefully they also sent it to your mortgage company. You should just call your mortgage company and make sure that they are paying it. It's possible there's been a glitch. So call your mortgage company and make sure they're paying it. Because if there's a mistake by the mortgage company, the city doesn't really care. It's on you. So make sure that the mortgage company is doing what they're supposed to do.
They definitely send it. They definitely send it. Ours is the same way, and they definitely send it to my house. And I always have to call and make sure that my mortgage company has it, and my mortgage company pays it. But like MA said, I always have to make sure it goes to both places.
Thank you for your questions.
So the next thing I wanted to talk about is, if you want to challenge your bill, if you think that not just about the assessment, but the bill is in some way wrong, unfortunately, the only method you can use to do that is to pay your taxes and then file a lawsuit. So that's a really hard way to have to challenge your bill, because one, if you can't afford to pay your taxes, then you can't file your lawsuit and you can't challenge your bill. And two, you have to go to court to challenge your bill. I would encourage you to go talk to them. It's possible that it is something that can be resolved just by talking to the tax department, but if you can't get them to recognize that it's wrong, then you have to file a lawsuit. Now, in terms of the assessor process, you can appeal your assessment without making any payments or going to court. So when the assessor process comes up in the summer, you can do an informal appeal, which means going to talk to the assessor about how he came up with the value of your property. And then there's also a formal appeal process where there's actually a trained appraiser there to review the information you provide about what the assessment should be. So that's a lot easier than having to go to court. Let's go to the next screen, Sarah. Right. So we are trying to give general information that will help anybody in the city of New Orleans who's trying to pay their property taxes. And that is what this educational series is supposed to be about. I want for people in the lower ninth ward, we also will give you individual assistance. So if you receive your tax bill in the mail and you don't understand it, or you thought, wait a minute, I paid last year's bill and it's showing up as though I haven't paid it, you can call us and we will go through your bill with you and help you understand it, and then also call the tax department and try to resolve the problems. So our phone number is there on the screen, 504-943-6000, and we would be delighted if you would call us. If you don't live in the lower ninth ward, I'm really sorry to say that we do not have the resources to help the entire city in this way. So you should then call City Hall, and they are pretty helpful about answering whatever questions you have about your bill. So call them and see if they can help you. And as we do this work, we often get more information about the process as we represent individual homeowners. So we will also try to disseminate that information, and we try to improve the processes so that will help everybody in the city, not just people from the lower ninth ward. Do we have any more questions, Gaynell and Sarah?
Not at this time.
Okay. But if anybody has more questions, please put them in, because we do have a little more time, and that is sort of the basic. I really just wanted to make sure everybody has a basic understanding of what they need to do to understand their taxes and to know how to pay them, so that you will not be in the situation of accruing fees and interest. Again, the interest rate is 12% a year. So if you don't pay on time, then you start getting into a spiral where your costs go up, and it becomes harder to ever catch up. So the last thing we wanted to talk about, thank you, Sarah, is that this series is going to be happening once a month. The second Tuesday of every month, we are going to be having educational series directed toward homeowners. In the spring, it will be helping people who are already homeowners preserve their homes. That means knowing how to deal with your real property taxes, as we discussed today. Next month, on March 9th at 5:30, we will have a representative from the Urban Conservancy talking about their front yard initiative. And that is about managing water on your property. If figuring out how to do a little do-it-yourself kind of drainage work or plantings that will keep your yard and your house from flooding. Then, so that's March 9th at 5:30. So we really hope that you'll be here for that. And then future sessions will be, we're going to have a session on mortgage counseling. So a lot of people I know are dealing with being behind on their payments because of COVID, because of all the employment issues around COVID and the other expenses of COVID. So we want to have a training on how to deal with those kinds of issues. We will also, before hurricane season, have an informational session about flood insurance. And in terms of hurricane preparedness, also, we often talk about how to get out of the city, but another piece that's important is how to prepare your home. Even if whether you evacuate or you don't have to evacuate for that storm, how do you make sure your home is ready for the storm? We'll also be doing one on sort of small scale do-it-yourself home repairs that can, again, protect your home and maintain your home so you're able to stay in it. And then we will be doing one, as I said earlier, on the assessor, the assessment, the process of appealing your assessment as that time draws nearer. And then the last thing, the last slide is, if you know people who weren't able to come to this training, it will be posted online. You can go to our website, which is l9wha.org, to see the slideshow and the presentation. Gaynell or Sarah, do you have other things that you would like to add?
Yes, I have a question. So, can you talk a little bit more about tax problems? Like, for example, what happens when someone's property tax isn't paid? Like, how much time do they have to pay it? And then how long before they lose, their property? Like, can we share, with the public on, like, especially with COVID and
Yes. So if you don't pay it on February 28th, you're not going to go to tax sale on March 1st. It's about 6 months before they can legally take you to tax sale. So you do have you do have time. And we recognize not everybody can make your payment all at once. There are many other cities where you actually are allowed to pay in 2 installments. And we are not one of those cities. So it's really hard to make your payment all at once. And that's just a fact of life. So what you should do if you're in that case is try to make partial payments, because if you can't pay all at once, then pay a little bit at a time. And then you won't be as far behind. So you can't it's about 6 months before they start preparing to take you to tax sale, but it usually just does not happen that quickly. So you definitely have time to catch up. And I really appreciate that question, Gaynell, because if you can't pay the whole thing on February 28th, we'll just start paying and you will catch up gradually. And that will keep you in your home, which is what we're trying to do.
Another question I have, and this one you'll laugh at it because it's from my mom. She wants to know, is there anything that people can do to like keep their property taxes from going up, in terms of like, especially for people who are on a fixed income? Is there anything that they can do, or are there any resources out there for them?
The biggest one is the age freeze. So the way the age freeze works is the assessor puts a value on your property. If you are 65, that value can never go up. So that is the way to keep your taxes from going up. If you're 65 and you get your age freeze, your taxes can never go up. So that is the best way. If you're not 65, I don't want to say don't improve your property, because you definitely have to maintain your property. If you're not 65, then the best way really is when it's called open rolls. So New Orleans, the way we review assessments is there's a period that begins on July 15th called the open rolls period. And basically the assessor throws the books open and everybody can look at their assessment and see if they think it's accurate. And if they don't think it's accurate, you can challenge it. It may be something as simple as they have the square footage wrong, right? So they have you assessed at, $100 a square foot, but they say your house is 1,200 square feet and it's only 1,000 square feet, right? Something very simple like that. You can challenge that. Another thing that happens is if it's new construction, sometimes they assess your house at the amount it costs to build your house. Well, there are a lot of neighborhoods in this city where the cost to build is higher than the market value of the house. So that is another way to challenge your bill, is to say that's higher than the market value. So you have my value wrong. And then the value gets reduced, and then and as a result, your taxes get reduced. So that is the other really good way to try to lower your property taxes. And then again, as I said, the homestead exemption is the other great way to lower your taxes. Another thing with the homestead exemption, I said earlier that if you have two owners and only one of them lives there, you only get half of a homestead exemption. Well, it may be one way to change that is to often it's because you haven't done a succession. Often maybe your siblings or your cousins are owners, but they really aren't interested in being an owner. If you do a succession, then you actually end up increasing your homestead exemption because you have taken some of your co-owners off the title. That's another way to get your tax bill to go down.
And May, we have a question, more of a situation from Facebook. And Charmaine is asking, well, she's telling us that she has been contacting the assessor's office for more than a month, and she has left messages and no one answers or call her back. Do you have any suggestions for her?
I haven't had that experience. That's funny. They may have internet. I mean, they may have an email. I'm not sure whether you are on email. If you call our office, I can, I have the direct line of somebody there. I'm probably not supposed to give it out, but if you call our office, I can call her for you and find out the answer to your question. I'm talking a little slowly because I'm trying to see, I'm just going to their website right now. Their website is nolaassessor.com. And I'm trying to see if they have an email address also, if you're on email. I'm not sure that they do. I don't see one. Give our office a call, 943-6000, and I will see if I can get in touch with someone for you. Oh, they do. info@orleansassessors.com. So INFO at Orleans, and then assessors, ASSESSORS.com, if you have access to email. And if you have access to the internet, the assessor actually has a really good website, and it's nolaassessor.com. And so you may be able to find your answer there, because they really have a good website. And another way to get information about your property is to go to the assessor's website. Again, nolaassessor.com. I'm sorry I didn't prepare a slide about this because this is really helpful. You click on search records, and which is on the left. It says search records. And then you have to, thanks, Sarah. You have to sign a disclaimer. And then you come up with you can access your personal record by your location. So you just type in your location address, and up comes all the information on your property. And it is it's a wealth of information. It tells you how your land is valued, how your building is valued, therefore the total value based on how the assessor is valuing your property. And there's also, and whether you have the homestead exemption, whether you have the age freeze, whether you have the disability freeze, and there's also a button you can press called tax information, which actually brings you to your tax record. And it lays out how much money you owe. Now, if you've gone to tax sale, that information is not, they don't show all that information, but if you have not gone to tax sale, it will show everything that you owe. So yeah, Sarah, thank you for putting that up there, nolaassessor.com, and then you go to search records, and then you will find a lot of information about your property.
Okay, and may we have some more questions? Cynthia's asking you to address taxes concerning persons who have not opened succession.
So if you haven't done a succession, the taxes are still due on that property. So you just have to keep paying the taxes. But what you are encouraged to do is to do the succession, because the longer you go without doing the succession, one, the harder it's going to be, because, you know, as heirs pass, then their children are the ones who have to be notified of the succession. It just gets more and more and more complicated the longer you wait. And again, as I said, you may owe more in taxes because you have heirs as owners who aren't necessarily interested in being a part of owning that property, but your taxes are still reduced because of it. So taxes just continue to be due whether or not you have done the succession. And so that's why you're really encouraged to do the succession as soon as possible. Trying to think of whether there are resources for that. If you can't afford to hire a lawyer to do your succession, there is a pro bono office in New Orleans that can help you with that. It is income based. So their email address is probono-no.org. And their phone number, I'm just pulling it up on my computer, is, hang on one second. Their phone number is 504-581-4043. 581-4043. They might be able to help you with your succession if you can't afford a lawyer to do it for you.
Okay. All right, I have two more questions. For someone who has just purchased their home on January 29th, do they have to pay property taxes on February 28th, or will they get a bill next year?
I've never had the question, but I'm quite sure you're going to have to pay 2021 taxes. You probably, whoever handled the closing, your title attorney, should be able to answer that question for you. Usually when you buy a house, when a house is sold, the taxes for that year are parceled up between the seller and the buyer. So the seller would have had to pay taxes for January 1 to 29, and the buyer would pay taxes for January 30th through the end of the year. And that is usually addressed at the closing in the closing paperwork. So I would call your closing attorney for the answer to that question. And the other thing you want to know is if you are living in the house that you just purchased, you are entitled to a homestead exemption for this year. So you may have to, they will probably ask you to pay the taxes and apply for a refund, but you are entitled to the homestead exemption for this year. And you may want to make sure that you apply for the refund and that you receive the refund. It takes some time for that refund check to come.
Okay, next question. How long does someone have to file their homestead exemption or age freeze?
The homestead exemption can be filed at any point until the end of the year to get it for this year. The sooner you do it, if you're applying for the homestead exemption for 2021, the sooner you do it, the sooner you're going to get your refund. If you don't, for example, if you don't apply until November, and you didn't pay your taxes for this year, fees and all of this stuff are accruing, you're actually at risk of tax sale if you haven't applied until November and you haven't paid. So that the safest thing to do is to pay while you're waiting for it to be approved. And then once it's approved, you apply for a refund. So the best thing to do is to apply tomorrow. And then you'll get credit for this year. You will also get credit, as I said earlier, for prior years. It's retroactive for 3 years if you were the homeowner then as well. What that means actually is if you don't apply until 2022, you'll get it for 2021, but you will have already had to pay for 2021 and wait for a refund. Oh, and for the age freeze, for it to apply to 2021, you want to apply by August 15th. The assessor sometimes changes this date. It's a little vague when you have to apply for the age freeze for, but you are advised to apply by August 15th.
Okay, and Daryl was asking if you can give the website again for the succession information.
Yes, absolutely. So it's probono.org, probononeworleans.org. So it's probono-no.org. And I'm just going to say the phone number again for people who don't have the internet. Well, I guess if you're on here, you have someone in your life who has internet, but if it's easier for you to call than email, the phone number is 581-4043. Are we seeing any other?
And checking across, and I don't see any other questions right now. Nope, that's all.
Great. So as Sarah and Gaynell said, this will be posted. You can go to our website to re-watch it. Sometimes information comes quickly and you may want to re-watch it, or you may want to share it with your friends. And again, if you have any questions, call the city, call the assessor's office. And if you live in the lower 9th Ward, call our office, and we're 943-6000. So thank you all so much. We really appreciate you being here at our first educational session. And as I said, next week, March 9th, we'll be talking about avoiding flooding in your yard. And then we will have other programs the second Tuesday of the month for the rest of the year. So thanks so much. And thank you, Gaynell and Sarah, for coordinating us.